for the sector, we're organising a series of these focus groups. And this is an exclusive one for the Active Partnership Climate Action leads and environmental leads and others who have got really keen interest in this area. So we have got a session planned for you today that's going to be a combination of our team giving you some briefing and context setting. We have then got a large chunk of the session which is going to be all about you. We want to hear your views, your voices, and we're going to be using a combination of verbal interactions as well as a Miro board. And for those of you, some of you probably are very familiar with these sorts of interactive whiteboards. I know use Padlet and such like. We'll make sure that you all get a driving lesson into that, and we can use that to capture all of your views if you don't get a chance to come on screen and say it verbally. Right, so Kate, would you mind sharing the screen and we'll get going?
Can you see that?
Yeah, that's loaded. That's great.
Perfect.
Okay, so if you can just go on to the first slide. Okay, so bit of project context for you. You would have received some of this in the briefing for this session, and for those of you who were in the September session with Rosie, but for any new joiners, so Sport England have got their 10-year strategy called Uniting the Movement. And this really looks to tackle climate change and thinking about how people live and how they travel and to connect that with health and active environments. And so they realised that they need to do a sort of sector-wide consultation to understand where the sector is at, what challenges they're facing, what actions they might already be taking, and what support is required. So this consultation is happening basically in April and May, and then we'll write up the analysis in June. And then what we'll be doing is working with Sport England to take all of that insight and develop it into a strategy, which is their sort of vision for future and how they can support sports and communities to adapt to our changing environment and to mitigate their impact on climate change. So over to the next slide, please, Kate. So the consultation is GB-wide, England, Scotland and Wales. And there are 3 key elements to it. So we've been doing interviews with individuals at sort of umbrella bodies, landowners, a few NGBs to really get that sort of deep dive insight. We're doing focus groups, invite only for umbrella bodies and governing bodies, where we can get lots of people's views and get a bit of conversation going and exchange of ideas. And then we've got a survey, and the survey is intended for those thousands of grassroots clubs and facilities and groups all over the country. And that will be closing on the 19th of May. Any help you can give us to help disseminate that survey is much appreciated. Kate, if you could put the link in the chat, that would be brilliant. And on to the next slide, please, Kate. It's talking about the team that are involved in this consultation. So Useful Projects are leading it. We are a sustainability consultancy based in London, but we work all over the UK and internationally. And our mission is to really transform organisations and places. And we work across net zero carbon, circular economy, biodiversity and social value. And we are really delighted to be supported by 2 experts in the sports sector who you can see on the right there, Dan Redding and Carolyn Headley, who are not here today, but they have got decades between them of really deep expertise and experience in the sports sector. So we're working very, very closely with them. Next slide, please. So in terms of the objectives for this session, as I said when I sort of opened the call, we are looking for feedback on what you're already doing, opportunities and priorities for change, the challenges and support needed to overcome these. And we're going to be exploring the connections between sport and physical activity and environmental sustainability, because today, a lot of it has been about the connections to the social and sometimes economic agenda, but mainly social. So we're going to really focus on the environmental sustainability side. And we will use all of that to help shape Sport England's priorities and strategy. So in terms of agenda and timing, we've got that there on the right. In a moment, I'm going to hand over to Kate to do the kind of sports and physical activity and climate change context. We know that you've already had the kind of generic climate change context. We had a fantastic presentation from David on the last meeting that we had back in September on that. So we're not going to redo that. We're going to really focus on the links with environment sustainability and sport and physical activity. So I think, Kate, that's over to you at this point.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jo. Hi, team. Yes, good morning. And I'm going to run through a little bit of environmental sustainability, climate change context, but more so it's linked to physical activity and sport, because we appreciate that you're all pretty clued up on the climate change context and what needs to be done and the climate emergency, and you're aware of that, and which is fantastic. And so we're kind of just going to briefly look today to set the context for the session moving forward, some of the links to physical activity. So firstly, as I'm sure you've seen, it feels like there's like this bit of groundswell around climate change and sport and physical activity. What does this mean for sport and physical activity? Mostly that's the title, because in some of the slides for the other focus groups, I run through a bit of the climate change context. So have that in your mind. And so what does this mean for sport and physical activity? Well, we know that, certain sports are going to be much more impacted than others. We know that certain countries are going to be far more impacted than others, but it is at the heart of it, it's going to impact our ability to participate. We know that we have snow reducing, and we have heat waves becoming more common in certain countries. So this is just kind of showing, that it seems to be a growing conversation. And so we're going to kind of look at it in two ways. So how does the environment and the changing climate impact us, impact our participation in sport and physical activity, or impact our sport and physical activity in general? And on the right there, at the heart of it, it's really affecting our ability to participate. You're less likely to go out for a run when it's 40 degrees outside, or participate in any outdoor activity or sport, really. We're seeing flooding of our football pitches, our hockey pitches there on the left. We're seeing drought of our cricket, and for example, the AstroTurf cricket pitch being the only thing that survived the summer's drought. We're seeing heat waves affecting professional athletes, but there's also just the day-to-day activity that it's going to be impacting as well. A lack of snow, reduction in snow sports, our ability to participate in snow sports, but also things like air quality. It's you're less likely to go for a run in a smoggy city, or and how that's impacting I know that I personally don't want to go for a run on a main road either. So it's about how we're feeling as well. And then on the flip side of this, or closely linked, is how do we, playing sport and participating in physical activity, how does that impact the environment? How are we contributing to climate change? And so that's, contributing to climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution. Pollution could be from the travel that we have to do to and from our sport and physical activity. It's the high energy demand from the facilities we use, the indoor facilities. So as the temperature warms or the outdoor climate becomes less accommodating, we're going to move indoors. But then there's the high energy impact of those indoor facilities, like sports halls and swimming pools, as we've all heard about quite a lot. It's the consumption of products, be that sports kit or also just consumables and water bottles and everything, and then the associated waste generated with those consumables and products. And so we know, and you've all been talking to David, who is the king at championing this, but there's that link between physical activity and environmental sustainability that we're aware of. And it's simple switches in our day-to-day life. It's things like walking and biking instead of taking your car, which both reduces your emissions and has great benefits for your health and your increasing your physical activity in your day. It's things like gardening and active activity, but an active thing to do in your day to day, while also having biodiversity and improvements in your local community. Plogging, it feels like this photo in the middle there seems to have hit the trends in the last 5 years. So running and picking up rubbish at the same time, having that benefit for the environment. But there's also some more formal initiatives that are screenshotted there on the right. So things like climate games, where you work out and you get points and for positive climate action, and Good Gym, where it's like volunteering with your community as you run and help people who need it and need any assistance in your community, and Planet Earth Games that were a winner of the British Sports Awards. And then at a higher level, regarding sports and climate change, is the UN's Sports for Climate Action initiative. And so you might recognize some of the signatories there on the right. And so these are some of those larger sports bodies that have effectively signed up to these 5 principles and climate targets, saying that they will halve their emissions by 2030 and aim to be net zero by 2040. Joe, I thought I'll hand back to you here for this a brief interlude on open funding.
Lovely. So we were at the British Association for Sustainable Sport conference, the BASIS conference, a couple of weeks ago, and our client there, Rosie at Sport England, wanted to raise awareness about their small grants programme. So for the King's coronation, and we know that the King has a real personal passion for the environmental sustainability agenda, they've got this small grants programme which invites projects that have got a real focus on sustainable activity while reducing the impact on the environment to put forward your ideas. And they've got grants available from £300 up to £15,000 to not-for-profit organisations. So please do have a look at that, talk to your network, get some ideas together and put the applications in. The deadline for that is the 30th of June, so there is time, and I really hope that you'll be able to take advantage of that for your network locally. So please get those thinking caps on and make the most of that. Next slide, please. We also wanted to touch on Sport England's environmental social governance requirements that are in a code for sports governance. So UK Sport and Sport England require all of the funding all of the organisations that they fund to follow this governance framework. And it really sets out the levels of transparency, diversity and inclusion, accountability that's required from these organisations. And that, I'm sure that you're all aware of this, but for anyone who isn't, as of 2021, there were some revisions to that code that now requires you to ensure that your organisation, so all of your active partnerships, factor environmental social governance into the decisions that you're taking and the action that you're implementing. And you can see the requirement there on the screen. So this is about absolutely embedding it into everything that you do. And then there is, next slide please, Kate, the reporting of it as well. So there's this requirement to demonstrate what you've been doing and provide information on your covenant governance in relation to this requirement. And we imagine that lots of you are in a position where you don't really know what to write. Some of you may be more advanced in this area and do know exactly what you should be saying and have got the right links. And we've got David's example here of what he's done for Active Humber. But this is something that we're going to be unearthing today as well. So just wanted to flag that. Right, next one, please, Kate. Right, what we're going to do now is get into the the main purpose of today, which is to get all of your views on where the physical activity sector is at in your region, what you're doing as an organisation, and then what we looking ahead into the future, what needs to happen to help accelerate that action. So you can see the broad timing there on the right. We will be a little bit flexible. We'll see how it goes. We definitely won't go overtime. We may even come under. So Kate, at this point, do you want to do the Miro Board driving lesson just to make sure that everyone's confident in using that?
Let's do it. All right. Let me just swap screens. Okay, can everyone see that? Amazing, thank you, Dave. Okay, so yes, let's call this a driving lesson, but a bicycle driving lesson, obviously, because it's low emissions. But so yeah, welcome to the Miro Board. Just to quickly go through some of the key controls. I'm sure you've all been on similar boards before, so I won't dwell too long. But just quickly, I'm zoomed way in here, and sometimes you can zoom very far in, so much so that you get a bit lost. I find this, if you follow my mouse down on the bottom right hand side, I find this button really helpful. So if I click this, this will pop me back out to screen, and you'll be able to see everybody else's cursors in there, probably buzzing around, so you'll be able to zoom into everyone. Also, as we move through the sections, I can kind of bully you and make you move to wherever I am, so I might do that. So if it all shifts, apologies for that. Zooming in and out depends on your computer and mouse setup. For me, I hold Control and scroll my mouse wheel, so just have a player with that when you're in there. Currently, I have the mouse pointer tool, but I can also switch to the hand grab tool, which helps if I want to drag myself around, which sometimes can be a bit easier, and then I'm not accidentally moving anything, although I have tried to lock everything, so it doesn't get too chaotic in here. Adding a sticky note, you will notice sticky notes kind of posted around the board that you can use to your heart's delight. However, you can also add your own. If you, on the left-hand side toolbar here, fifth icon down is sticky note, and you can add something in, add it in pretty easily. You can also Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste sticky notes or dots when we get to them. Then if you really think something links, you can draw an arrow between things, but you might not need to. But yeah, so that is the Miro Board. I will now send you the link, and hopefully everybody can jump in with these. So I'll put that in the chat. I've also just put the link to the survey in the chat as well, just previously. So that link should be coming through now. If you want to jump in, I'll keep sharing my screen so that we know where we're going. And depending on how conversation goes, I can always stop sharing so that it's easier to allow for convo. But yes, you'll see everybody's being pulled in there, so you can see the other people's collaborators' cursors, as they're called. So we're going to start over here on the left-hand side. Yeah, Joe, do you want to kick us off on Blue Sky Thinking as everyone comes in?
Sure. So let's just give everyone a moment to see if they can access the link, have a little navigate around and see if you can find your way over to this first section, which is all about your organisation. And Kate, maybe you want to do your wizardry and bring everyone over. Now, it's worth saying you don't have to use Miro. We know it doesn't work for everyone. It can make some people feel a bit sick the way it can whiz around. Oh, look at all the cursors, amazing. We want you to be able to use the chat, but we're also going to invite you to speak verbally as well. So it looks like everyone's here already. Right, let's get going then. This first session is a warm-up, get you all thinking and thinking positively about the future. We're going to do a bit of blue sky thinking. And what we want you to do is have a think about what would a best practice environmental sustainability sort of physical activity sector look like. And we want you to think far into the future, beyond 2030 to 2050. And don't worry about all the barriers that you're currently facing. This is about a vision for the future. So give it a go. See if you can grab a post-it note and start writing some ideas down. And I'm going to give you some prompts here. So what would our buildings be like? Have a think about buildings and how they might be different. Have a think about what the outdoor environment might be like. How might that be different in your vision for the future? And how might we travel? How might we travel from A to D? A to B? What shifts would you see there? You could also have a think about the stuff, all the changes you'd like to see in the way that we buy, use and dispose of products and materials and equipment. Kate, I can see that we've got some rather large post-it notes going on here. There we go. Everyone's managing to resize if they need to, which is great. You can think about biodiversity, air quality, climate change impacts. I can see that we're already getting a few ideas there. If you're struggling to use Miro, if anyone would like to come off mute and just let us know, we can help you out. But it looks like I've got quite a few suggestions there. Just to give you the heads up, I am going to just leave you purposely, on purpose, awkward silences as well, just to give you that thinking time. Some of these just absolutely brilliant. No cars, community gardens everywhere, powered by renewable energy. Got zero waste events. Where places to play are also places that are displaying high levels of biodiversity. This is brilliant. Keep it coming. We'll just do a couple more minutes here. Got decarbonised leisure assets. Wouldn't that be brilliant? It's quite a lot around green spaces and multi-purpose green spaces here. Could they be used for physical activity and you can grow local seasonal food? Yes, wonderful. And buildings that will enable people to play and interact with nature. So maybe a much closer relationship between our buildings and nature and the natural environment. Would anyone be brave enough to come off mute and help bring this to life a little bit? If you've got a particular vision that you would like to share, if anyone would like to do that, I welcome you to come off mute and do that. If not, very happy for you just to keep doing those post-it notes. Have we got any brave people there? That's okay. Just going to do one more minute on this.
Oh, I have a question. Can you endorse, is there a way in Miro you can endorse other people's post-its?
Okay.
I don't think so specifically, but if there's, so if there's one that you really agree with, maybe add something similar or like build on it and kind of, you might see me moving some around and I'm trying to group them together to group into ideas. For example, I'm looking to group all the active travel and ones about travel together, just so that you can kind of start to see some themes emerging.
Okay, I'm just going to highlight a few more and then we'll move on because these are just absolutely fantastic. I love this sort of one that I can see in the middle here in pink around interconnected towns and villages that are connected by that network of safe cycling and walking infrastructure. So not just within a town, but from how you can get from town to town in a safe way that keeps people healthy and reduces our environmental impact in terms of carbon emissions, and will really support our air quality as well. Okay, brilliant. I think what we're going to do at that point is move on to the next part of the board and of the next part of the session, which is going to be about you, all about your active partnership and your current approach to environmental sustainability. So Kate's summoning us over to this area where we'd like you to grab a post-it note. We just want to just quickly capture who's in the room. So you don't need to do your name. You can just put the name of your active partnership there, please. If you could do that first, then we'll move on to our sliding scales. Everyone seems to be managing that okay. Okay, I'll just let people finish that and we'll go on to our key questions about where you're at in your own organisation. So at this point, we're not looking at your network, we're not looking at the wider physical activity sector. We're thinking about your specific organisation. Great. So across the bottom there, you can see that we've got some sliding scales. And what we want you to do is grab a dot from the left and pop it on the scale. So let's start with the first one, which is about how knowledgeable you feel your organisation is on sustainability issues. And we want you to be really honest and frank here. If you really don't feel like you've had any training, you don't know what the issues are, and you're really at the beginning of the journey, put yourself there. We won't know who you are. Equally, if you feel like you're more of a leader, go for that top end there and very knowledgeable. And at this point as well, we'll also invite you to put some post-it notes there as well for any particular comments that you might want. So when we're thinking about knowledge, we're thinking about, do you understand the issues and know how to act on them? Have you got someone responsible and had some training? Are you going to sustainability events? Are you reading content around it? So let's see what we've got here. We've got quite a scale, actually. Some people right at that lower end, not, just starting out. A few here in the middle. And some who feel like they're approaching that upper end, which is great. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which I can see some of you are already doing. This is about progress. And in a moment, I am going to invite some of you to come off mute and tell us about some of the progress that your organisation is already making. So have you got a plan? Have you implemented some of those actions? Have you got case studies? I'd expect someone at the advanced or leader end to be sort of communicating what they're doing externally. You might have put yourself in that leadership position at that top end. So at this point, if I can ask anyone who feels like they might be really at the beginning end and they haven't really started, just to come off mute. We're not going to judge you. We'd just like to understand where you're at. Is there anyone who's really starting at the very beginning on the call? Come on, I know you're there. No one wants to admit it.
Hello.
Oh, we've got someone. Ben, thank you.
That's okay. Sorry, I'm working on my laptop, so I was trying to work out what tab I was supposed to be on. Yeah, so I'm relatively new to the active partnership world anyway, really. I came from the Commonwealth Games, and when that finished, then went into active partnerships with Sport Birmingham. And this is a new opportunity that came to our organisation only 2 weeks ago, I even heard about supporting environmentally within the organisation, and I wanted to use it as a piece of development for myself and for the business too. But yeah, so when it comes to that first question on the first scale around being knowledgeable around what our organisation do, I'm not too aware of it anyway. Aware of I'm hearing that there's been a lot of conversations that have gone on previously before. This is my first one joining today. But yeah, using this as a real learning experience and got a lot of energy to support. But I think I've placed myself quite far down that scale because being quite reflective, I definitely don't think I understand the breadth and depth of the this area in relation to the sport and activity sector. You always think, for me anyway, I think sport must be great for the environment, but it was quite interesting for me already to see how, well, actually, when you think about single-use items or leisure centre facilities and what it takes to power them, it's quite interesting. It's already learning a lot of new things.
Brilliant. And I think what you said there, I could see reflected in the board. So we've got it looks like we've got lots of ambition. So lots of ambition, but perhaps not quite as much knowledge, mixture of progress, but perhaps without a plan. It might be ad hoc. And then at the expertise, it doesn't look like there's probably enough kind of expertise, and maybe there's a need for some training and upskilling across your organisations. Would anyone else like to comment on their own active partnership or what you're seeing here on the board? I'm going to keep the awkward silence until someone comes off. Oh, you are a quiet bunch today. Jade, come on.
Smiled then at the wrong
You did.
I guess for us, I'm just kind of thinking about how to answer that question. I feel like we've been looking at this probably for quite a while now, so not as long as some partnerships. So I'd say we're about 6 to 7 months into our journey. And I guess just that reflection on the time it feels like it's taken to get into it properly. So I've still put myself kind of just above mid-table. So spent a lot of time thinking about it in the context of our organisational vision, our priorities, and how we work locally, to then think, what does this agenda mean to us as an organisation and to our external partners? So I guess even kind of getting to grips with things like we're just looking at how we measure our carbon management, trying to get those skills into the organisation, so that then we can, I guess, truly develop our own action plan before we start looking at some of our external role around this agenda. And I feel like as a team and our board, it is a cross-organisational piece of work. So I think that's where it's taken us that time really to kind of make sure that it's a shared vision and develop those shared opportunities, if that makes sense. So we're on the way, far from the top end, but we're on our way there, hopefully.
Brilliant, Jade. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're seeing that quite a lot, actually, is that organisations are really sort of focusing on getting their own sort of organisation in order before they feel like they can go out and support the wider sector. And that's actually the case for Sport England as well. So we are also working with them to calculate their own carbon footprint and get their own strategy for their internal work sorted, as well as then thinking, right, how can they go out to the wider sector? Nick, I can see you've got your hand up. Go for it. Love to hear you.
Hi, Nick from Get Berkshire Active. I just wanted to come in on the line that you've got there around how ambitious is your organisation, and that sort of leads to how much of a priority is it. So you've got kind of not a priority to, kind of high priority, I guess. But I think what you can see from the dots there is the people on the call probably are very ambitious and committed, and kind of very much believe this is a important area that we should be working on. I'd be interested to see what that looked like if you did it for your organisation or even for your network in your local area, because I think that might be two different things. You've got the passionate people on the call, but that may be different to the organisation and to your board and the wider view. And for me, it kind of feels like in our organisation, there's some people who, kind of are really kind of ambitious and believe this is a thing we should be doing as an organization, but there's still, we've got a debate about whether it's the most important thing that we should be doing and whether it's a priority and the capacity it will take against all the other things that we're doing, which are also massively important. And that's a slight tension there, I think, around the capacity, around the, how it's prioritized, the amount of time it can be given to embed it in kind of everybody's work. And so I just wanted to really kind of comment on that.
Thank you, Nick. I saw so many people nodding along as you were saying that. And I think it's a really important nuance that often we are speaking to the converted in these sessions. And yes, what do we think the view of the wider organisation will be, where you've got lots of competing agendas, people not sufficient budgets to do even your core activity, and this is often seen as an add-on. So part of this is going to be thinking about how you can really embed it and get it baked in and business as usual, so it's absolutely infiltrated into everything rather than it being this big thing on the side that you have to sort of tackle in isolation. So that's something we love to do as an organisation, is help people really embed it into their HR processes, into procurement, into their day-to-day decision making and business running. Okay, lovely. We've got lots of dots on there. So I think we're probably ready to move on to the next part of the board at this point. And now I want to take you to a position where you're thinking about the wider sports sector and physical activity sector that you as active partnerships are seeing in your network. So, Kate, are you summoning everyone over? See, lovely. So what we've got on the left here, we would appreciate it if you could tell us what environmental sustainability actions you're seeing in your local network, if any at all. And if you're not seeing any, just say, write one that says none. We're just not seeing it at all at this point. Sorry, I just need to cough. Let's have a look what kind of things we've got going on here. So it looks like we've got some examples around leisure trusts having sustainability plans. Great. Well, that's interesting. Some cupless running races taking place. It'd be interesting, how can we get rid of all of that waste that takes place in those running races? A few training and events happening. What sort of training and events are happening? What sort of topics are they on? I'd love to know what people, is it about carbon? Is it about biodiversity? What's going on in that space? Would anyone like to tell us? Come off mute or put your hand up. Someone's put a link to active travel, so perhaps they are more focused on active travel. Interesting observation here that you're seeing some in professional sports clubs, but not as much at the grassroots level. They've probably got more money to do this. The funding bodies are starting to put more pressure on them. They might be under pressure from some of their investors, some of their community stakeholders.
Yeah, somebody's put funding. What kind of funding? Can somebody expand on that? Verbally or note by note?
And is that funding Sport England funding? Is it funding from local authorities? Is it funding from charities? We'd love to know more about that. Yes, please.
Yeah, Graham from Be Active. I've been doing some work with Cricket East and the ECB around their facility strategy, and we've done some forums with clubs, and one of the things coming out of those forums is the impact of climate change on cricket clubs, particularly sort of a grassroots level. You know, maintaining pitches in particular, and what they've identified is a need actually to be able to respond to that. You know, those issues around ground maintenance and pitch preparation.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, you know, seeking to reduce carbon emissions. You know, that's been identified as a need coming out of this facility strategy report that will be fed back up to the ECB, and with a view to it being incorporated into, you know, how the ECB invests and the funding that it makes available moving forward. So it was quite a high profile issue in that process, and I don't think any of us thought it would be when we kicked it off.
That's really interesting, Graham. Thank you for sharing that. Is anyone else experiencing similar or doing similar? So we've got some quite frank things here as well, not a common thread in our partners. It's great. We love to hear this as well. So if things aren't happening, where is it not happening? Someone's put carbon literacy training there. So that's great to see. So for those of you who don't know, there's an organisation called the Carbon Literacy Project, and they offer a way for your organisation to get upskilled on carbon and become more literate, and you can get bronze, silver, gold awards, the number of people that you put through it. And they've actually just recently published a toolkit for the sports sector. So for those of you who might be interested in having a look at that, it's free for the next 6 months, I believe. So we'll perhaps, Kate, you could find a link to that and pop that in the chat for anyone who's not aware of that. It's definitely something to take advantage of. I'd love to hear more about the leisure centres and the leisure facilities and what they're doing. Are there examples of energy saving there through maybe technology, combined heat and power networks, linked to other buildings in the local area? Is it renewable energy technologies? Is there anyone here who can talk to the leisure trust and the leisure facilities and what you're seeing there?
I don't mind having a go, Joe. So Matt Evans from Active Devon. So I think we've got probably 2 or 3 typically local authority providers. Probably the biggest one is in Exeter City Council, where they opened, I think, one of the first passive house leisure centre swimming pools back in middle of last year. We've also got a leisure centre in Exmouth where they're basically using a computer server tech to heat the swimming pool. And again, other leisure centres where they've been tapping into the government, is it Salix funding for like ground source heat pumps and adding renewables.
Brilliant. We shall get those captured, because just below this part of the screen, there is a space for case studies. So if anyone else is aware of any particular examples and case studies like that, we would love you to put them on the board just below this section, please. That's great. I love that. Where's heat coming from and how can we use it? Yes, IoT, my goodness me, wearing away, creating all of that heat. How can we put it to good use? That is brilliant thinking. What's a green conservation gym? Tell us, please. Who wrote that? Love to hear more.
Yeah, that was me. Sorry, Dave from Active Sussex. gyms that people can go to where they do conservation work. So it's free to attend to, just to plant trees, that sort of thing.
Who's organising that sort of thing? Is that you, or is it another party?
The particular one I'm thinking of, give me a second, I'll find out and I'll pop it in the chat.
That would be great. I'd love to know who's driving that sort of thing. Right, Kay, any other observations here that you would like to pull out as your grouping things?
Not specifically, got a lot of active travel. I'm not sure who's put this very large poster in and then isn't deleting it. So I can't do anything about that. So if that's you, maybe shrink it down so it's easier to read the rest of these. This big one here. But no, there's a few things around schools, which is cool.
Plastic. A lot on what the local authorities are doing, and a bit on general public there, is there as well? And a lot of active partnerships.
Yeah, a lot with local authorities.
So it sounds like there's lots of good things going on, but perhaps it's a little bit ad hoc. People are doing good things, but might not have a plan that's guiding it, or maybe there is a plan. We've talked about the Leisure Trust sustainability plans, and we know that lots of local authorities have got sustainability plans. Does anyone have a view on that point, whether this is all happening a little bit ad hoc, or whether it's actually, related to a specific vision and a specific strategy in your local area? Does anyone have a view on that?
Joe, Martin from Active Dorset. I see our next question is, what do you think the drivers are for action? A lot around the leisure provision and the larger facility stuff was driven by the utility costs. So we saw an awful lot of pool covers going in, pool temperatures turned down, PIRs for lighting, LED lighting, lots to reduce utility costs. So the driver there was financial rather than ethical, I would say, and that's probably a common factor across some of our patch.
Great. Well, what a lovely segue over to that part of the Miro board. Thank you. Let's go on to that now. So we've got the next question is about the drivers are for this action. Why are people doing this? Is it energy costs? Is it kind of that ethical responsibility, wanting to do good? What else? Why are people busy doing this? We'd love to know what's really spurring people on and what we might be able to sort of use as a lever to get this accelerated action to go further. And I'd love to know if local authorities are a driver at all, and their policies at all influencing what you're doing. If someone would be happy to come off mute and talk to me a little bit about that, that would be brilliant. Is policy a driver for you at all? David, I might invite you in at this point. If you could tell us a little bit about the Humber on terms of the policy and your interaction with the local authority, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure, Joe. I think we've got 4 unitaries across the Humber, and they're all individually finding their own way through this. And after this call, I've got a call with one of the public health teams, which are wanting to have a chat to try and understand where they are. So, and I think what's coming across them all is that we are the sea is rising, we are getting flooded more, etc. So everybody is motivated that they've got to do something. But I think at the same time, it's just that gets lost in, I don't know what to do. And then I think that questions their motivation. I just know I need to do something, so they're not too worried about the motivations, but just tell me what I need to do, and then that'll give me the motivation to do something, and then that opens up other lines of thoughts, etc. So that's what I put the comment in the chat, was that I think it is still very ad hoc, and I think we as active partnerships need to work out in each of our individual areas what is our role.
Yeah.
And what can we add? And because I don't think just saying something nationally will be the way forward. It's sort of different in each area.
Of a local approach, absolutely. And it sounds like you need that kind of guiding vision and some direction to say, look, and particularly when you think of in a local area, all those different stakeholder groups who will be working towards, common goal, and how you can get those different stakeholder groups activated and on the same page and all working together in a coordinated way, rather than in isolation. Thanks, David. Right, let's see what we've got here. Kate, I'll just invite you in as well. If you spotted any kind of trends or groups, please feel free to chip in.
I think one that we... Sorry, go for it, Julie.
Julie, you go first. You go.
Yeah, I popped my hand up really around the policy area, and so I represent the voluntary sector on the Hampshire Health and Wellbeing Board. And another colleague from the voluntary sector has been very vocal in that environment around climate change. And she wasn't there representing a climate change organisation, although she is a member of one. She was there for some other reason, but she's been able to use that opportunity to bring it into the board's thinking and discussions, to the point where it's very much a feature now of policy and strategy within that board. And I think that, I mean, I don't know whether it's very particular to our area, but there's some really strong voluntary sector organisations that can really help us with our own work, as well as doing their own work, because I think there's again, it goes back to what David was saying about, what's our role as an active partnership versus who else is better placed to be able to do that. So if it's around active travel, if it's around nature and so on, there might be other organisations that are better place that we can just amplify their voices rather than being at the forefront of that. The other thing that happened in Hampshire a couple of years ago was that the local authority formed a kind of group of thinkers, I guess, to look at Hampshire in 2050. So that really brought forward the climate change agenda within that thinking. So I think it's kind of really, there's been several things that have happened around a similar time that's really been able to provide a platform to land the agenda locally.
Oh, thanks, Julie. That is really great insight. And I'll just pick up on one of the points there that made me think of something that I see a lot when I work with organisations and I ask them about the drivers. You mentioned about the board, and often if the CEO gets this and the board is on board with this agenda, you see much more action. So I'd love you to sort of reflect, I'm not going to ask you to verbalise it, but just reflect internally around your own sort of internal leadership and whether you feel they are sufficiently engaged and driving this, or could they benefit from some maybe some board level mentoring around this, about what the issues are and how to take action and how to drive change on this agenda. It may be something for you all just to have a think about. Okay, I don't think there are any other hands up. Right, have we got, Kate, would you mind summoning us over to the next part of the board, which is all about challenges?
Sure thing.
And shall we try unsharing the screen just to give it a go for the rest of the session? So we've got people, if you've got two screens, you can have the Miro board on one and then we'll see others. So Kate, for you to stop sharing and then we'll go. Lovely. Okay, so what we want to understand from you in this next part is which environmental challenges you are seeing. So we're going to really focusing on the flooding, on the drought, on the high temperatures. And as you do this, if you could indicate which region it relates to, you're in, and so we might just get a flavour for if there are particular parts of the country that might be experiencing particular issues. That would be great.
I also, in both this section and the next, I brought some notes across from the Padlet that you, David, sent through, and the work you did a few months ago. So some of those white post-it notes that are already in place are there for you to build on as well. So from your previous conversations.
And I would love to hear from you if you are in a particular part of the UK where you feel like you're feeling the extreme weather events. Are you an area that has particular, flooding issues, or perhaps there's some other environmental challenge that is very unique to you? I would love to hear from you on that. Or perhaps everyone's experiencing quite similar issues. It's often with the sports pitches, they're often purposely designed to be a floodplain. And that is a part of a local authority's strategy to reduce flooding impacts on the homes. But I wonder if anyone has seen that becoming so common and such an inhibiting factor for the local communities to be able to go and do their exercise outside. Has anyone seen that?
Hi, Joe. Yeah, Bruce from Active Cumbria. Obviously, over the years, we've had significant issues with flooding, particularly in the Carlisle area. And you're absolutely right. There's a swathe of parks, major football pitches, tennis courts, leisure centres, all across that the River Eden, and to some extent that some of the facilities have still just been left abandoned and haven't had the investment. So that is a major issue. So I think that's one pickup for us in Cumbria, and not excluded just to Carlisle area, but really other rivers, and also the coastal areas. And again, I know that sort of David down in the Humber area got major issues potentially around coastal flooding as well. So anywhere you've got coastal, you'll have those issues.
How about you guys down in Devon? Matt, Aaron, are you experiencing that as well? Sorry to pick on you.
You going, Aaron?
Yeah, I can kick us off. So, yeah, totally. We're seeing elements of that as well. Parts of the county are falling into the sea. And, I don't know what it was like for the rest of you guys yesterday when it was thundering and lightning, but there was just flash floods in multiple places across the county. And you're just thinking back to some of our events that we ran last year. We've ran some cycle festivals. I think for the first time ever, we had to cancel some during the summer because of the extreme heat, which is just totally crazy. So, these things are becoming more and more common and are affecting everything and everyone. So, yeah, definitely not immune to it down here in sunny Devon.
Great, thank you. Are you seeing local authority budget cuts and just the lack of money to maintain, the revenue funding to maintain our parks and urban green spaces an issue? Are they full of litter? Are they never being, the grass is never mown? That's certainly an issue in my area in Croydon where there's just no money left. So I'd love to hear if anyone is experiencing that kind of, really poor maintenance of the outdoor environment affecting people's ability to partake. Is that a factor for you?
Interestingly, Joe, there's certainly at least one local authority in Devon where they've kind of spun that the other way. So they've said, actually, we've had to sack half of the grounds maintenance department. Actually, we are creating biodiverse spaces in our parks by not mowing them. And they're kind of presenting that as the driver, where I think really the driver is that they don't have the money to employ the people to mow the grass.
Oh, that's where we need some volunteers, right, from the local community to come and get their lawnmowers out and get fit.
I noticed
Joe,
Martin
Joe.
has his hand
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Sorry, just an observation around that. So yeah, parks budgets are less than 50% of what they were probably 8 or 9 years ago. So there is it is certainly that aspect. But cricket's a good example where local clubs are maintaining their own squares rather than councils doing it. So that's a model that's worked well. The observation I was just going to have on this about flooding and stuff, though, is that we're seeing sort of enhanced maintenance requirements. So people are hollow tiling, spiking, slitting, playing surfaces more and more to combat lost pitch time. But they're doing that without any consideration of the increase in diesel and everything else that they're using in doing that. So on a local basis, the focus is very much more and more intensive maintenance to maintain their own environment, but possibly collectively at a cost of the overall environment. And I think that's an interesting balance for us as a sector to wrestle with.
Great, really interesting sort of observation and proposition challenge there that I'm sure many of you are facing.
I think some of the interesting ones that we hadn't seen before, Joe, is this potholes one about as a consequence of heavy rain, creating potholes in local roads, and cyclists obviously struggling pretty hard with that.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's when it's very cold weather, isn't it? And you get the snow and the ice getting in the cracks, and then it expands, and oh my goodness, again in my area it's absolutely awful and very, very dangerous. So yeah, is anyone else experiencing that?
Yeah, Joe, I don't mind coming in on that. I put down the potholes one. It isn't just about the weather affecting the surface. It's about budget cuts as well. So there are some councils who are just, they've almost got a policy now of not maintaining the smaller roads. And as a result, that then leads to the roads that cyclists would like to ride on not really being that usable or being a bit dangerous if they do. And it definitely is impacting cycling, kind of numbers, safety and all of those things. But yeah, the weather is a factor as well.
Of course, that's a great point.
Okay, I'm just going to have a quick look on the board and see if there's anything else. And Kate, I invite you to bring out anything that's standing out for you as well.
Yeah, we've got one around water pollution, couple around water pollution, which is, yeah.
Is that preventing people from, is it swimming or just getting out on a canoe? Tell us a bit about that. Who's seeing the water pollution and what's it affecting?
That was me. And yeah, it's a bit about just general use of rivers and the coast, but it's also a lot of the monitoring that takes place in those places are done by volunteers, and it's pressures around the resources like Environment Agency and such not being quite stretched. So a bit of a combination of things.
Multifaceted, isn't it? As we're seeing here, it's lots of different factors in play that are causing these sort of challenges that you're facing. So I think this reinforces that need for a kind of systems approach and thinking about how all those different stakeholders can work together. It's definitely coming through here. Wow, I'm just having a look at the board. We have got so many challenges there that you're all facing. I wonder if we could move down to the bottom part then, which is about the barriers to action. So what we want to get out of you here is what are those specific kind of barriers and challenges that's preventing action? And it feels like from the first exercise that we did that there's lots of ambition here, but perhaps not enough expertise. So maybe there's something around lack of coordinated plan or lack of expertise. Have you got enough funding? Do you want us to say that Sport England should give you more funding? Write it down. resources and capacity, relationships in the local authority. Oh my goodness, this purple one is just spot on. Ignorance and apathy, and that feeling that the problem is just too big for any organisation, and where do you possibly start? You've got limited resources and limited budget, and no one centrally really driving it. We see that a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, some of you might have put post-its in the current challenges section that you actually think are more so barriers. So please feel free to move them down to this section if you think that that's more relevant. Things like changing behaviours, I guess, and
lack of leadership, just lack of investment. Oh, it's a whole host of issues, isn't it? And Sport England really want to just understand here what everybody's grappling with, so that they can try and tackle that through their strategy. But this might be also really great insight and content for your own active partnership, so that you've got it all here and you know it's all on one page, and you can go, right, this is what we're facing here. How can we develop a plan to kind of overcome these?
there's one here that says, it might be my ignorance as well, Joe, you might be able to shed some light, but two-tier authority.
So this is where in large regions have sort of, might get a combined authority or a district council, or there's lots of different levels. Would someone like to explain how that creates a sort of a barrier? Is it again just too many stakeholders and not coordinated?
Hey Joe, I'm Darren from Active Lancashire. Yeah, I put that on, and obviously we're in the process at the moment where we do have a two-tier authority. I think we're one of the last in the north that's still got a two-tier authority. So yeah, lots of kind of different local policies around environmental sustainability, and obviously you've got Lancashire County Council, who are our county council, really driving some of the active travel programme. So it's really about how those all connect up on a local footprint, but also on a county footprint as well. But obviously, it's a great time at the moment. We're looking at Lancashire 2050. That seems miles ago, years ago, to go to. But so that is where the future direction is going, and how we can perhaps use some of this work to influence policy changes moving forward.
Brilliant, good stuff. Thanks, Darren. Right, just give you a couple more moments to just see if there's any other barriers. Get it down on the page so we can understand them all. And then we're going to...
Again, yeah, they're those white notes that were up the top. Those are, again, from the Padlet that you contributed to. So some of those might inspire further thoughts.
Someone's written about the decision-making process, and I'd love to just unearth that a little bit more. If anyone has got a sort of an observation on that. Is it about, well, tell me, what is that about? Is it within your organisation? Is it within other organisations? Maybe that was one of the ones from before.
I like this one in the comments, actually. Sport England offers good pots of money for our local organisations. However, one of the areas that is not included is things like horticulture and gardening, as they are not classed as physical activity. However, darts is, I think, that needs to be revisited. I think that's a really interesting, good point.
Great, thank you, Sharon, for that. And a lack of collective action. Okay, there's lots there. So I think what we should do is move on now to section 4, the winning shot. So this is, what support do you think the sector needs? And what we're going to do, again, is split this into sort of various different parts of the bigger question. So the first bit on the left there is the support we need, as in you and your own active partnership. The one on the right is about the support that your local network needs, and it might be the same, but it might be something quite nuanced and a little bit different. We'll start with those, and then what we'll do is move on to Sport England's role in all of this. But right now, we'd love to focus on what you need as an organisation and what support your local network needs. Be bold. If you want free training and you want access to free consultants, get it down there. If you need more funding, say it. Is it, would downloadable templates and guidance be helpful? Maybe there are some things here about this, getting your own house in order before you feel like you can go out and drive action more widely in your area. Oh, I'd love to pick up on this point in the middle here. So we've got simple guidance, and someone's made the point that Sport England current checklist is a bit daunting for someone new with good intentions. So maybe there's a need to simplify it even more. Has anyone else tried to use that guidance?
Hi there, Joe. Just quickly again, that was me, Ben. As I was saying earlier, being quite new into this, I thought I'd have a little research yesterday and see what Sport England had to say about things, and I stumbled across part of their checklist. And as I mentioned in the comment there, it almost felt like I could echo before even starting this session today a lot of the comments that are coming around getting your house in order before, and it almost feeling too much of a big thing that you don't even know where to start. Looking at it, I just straight away I thought, I don't know where to go. what the best first steps I could take are, which maybe with someone with either less time or more barriers in place might just mean that straight away you don't even want to get involved and you lose those good intentions.
I'm sure, Ben, that there are so many people in exactly that same situation to you, and then you end up just feeling completely overwhelmed by it and don't know where to start. So I love that suggestion around this really simplicity, absolute basics, where to start, where to get help. So definitely more guidance needed. It looks like some facilitated expert support would be helpful, funding, capacity. Kate, do you want to go on mute? Your background's quite noisy. Mine is as well. Okay, I'm just going to have a look at what support the local network needs now to see if there's anything slightly different or nuanced there that you think all of those stakeholders that you interact with might need. Toolkit to help clubs become more sustainable. A local plan, wouldn't that be wonderful? Look, consultant advice. Funding to bridge the gap between traditional investment and cost of environmentally sensitive investment. I'd love to pick up on this a little bit more. So perhaps for those organisations that don't have the capital funding and can't make the case for a whole life, whole life sort of review or whole life cost savings. Would anyone like to come off mute and just talk to us about the kind of funding that might be useful?
Joe,
go for it, Martin.
Me, we're trying to replace tractor mounted mowing with robotic electric mowing that's powered by solar arrays, but the initial investment is obviously significant and more significant than replacing a tractor or a gang mower. So it's some support in bridging that gap to move to a more sustainable option.
Great. Has anyone else come across this sort of got a great idea and a great proposition, but just can't get the capital funding or can't make the business case internally? No, perhaps not.
Yeah, Joe, I'll jump in on that. I've heard some local clubs say they would be interested in putting in things like solar panels and combined heat and power, all of those sorts of interventions, but the cost of doing it and the initial outlay is actually too much, even though the long-term payback is probably worth it. They just simply don't have the capital funds up front to do it.
It would be great if we could get Sport England to have a specific fund for, renewable energy fund or something like that, where people can come for that big kind of the technology and the big outlays, or maybe some funding from other sources that can at least point people towards.
Just on that, Joe, I think there's definitely a real need for collaboration in that space, because there is the funding out there, especially, I mean, the remnants of EU funding. We've got the Southeast Network Energy. There's people out there. I think it's just, and I know a lot of the sports are looking at their sustainable strands now. I know Football Foundation have one coming out, cricket have one coming out, hockey are potentially looking at a loan scheme. So I think it's not necessarily for Sport England to potentially have their own one. It's just looking at how we can work better together, really.
Okay, that's a really interesting point, Sophie, and I love that term there, the loan scheme. But yes, it might not be Sport England doing it, but finding out who else is doing it and help that coordinated action, perhaps.
Yeah, Sophie, I think that's a really interesting point, and it comes to whose remit is this? Is it the sports sector and Sport England and NGBs and others, or is it a wider government strategy that we should be tapping into? And I think that's an interesting debate for this group.
Just on that, I'll come back in on that, Martin. Actually, one of the areas that we've tapped into in Berkshire is that in Reading they've declared a climate emergency, so they've actually got a unit there that are looking at their sustainability, which doesn't exist in the same way in the other. So we've got sort of 6 boroughs here, but in that one borough, because there's a climate partnership that lead on this work, there's lots more resource support, information, will to do stuff with us that isn't there in other places. And I think you're right, Martin, that probably does exist, but because we're all quite new to this, we probably just don't know where those sorts of organisations are.
Got a thumbs up there from Martin. I'm sure others nodding. Darren from Active Lancashire, it was a good nod. Bring you in at this point. Are you also feeling that would be helpful? And yeah, brilliant. Thumbs up. That's all right.
Jade, you've got your hand up.
I was going to say, my comment may not be useful anymore. It feels like we've moved into the world of, I guess, investment around this, but I've made a comment on there. I'd seen a great resource for churches around that, I guess, the investment and what was valuable investment in terms of every asset owning club could put in solar panels, but is that the right decision for them? And how they basically had 4 different tiers to kind of like low cost improvements, high cost improvements, and then others that maybe weren't looking at unless they were doing a full renovation. And I just thought, that really, how do we simplify those messages, particularly for our communities and volunteers? That was a great example of really being able to do that without getting stuck in the theory and the jargon of it.
I saw that comment, Jade, and was going to call it out. I think that's a really good one. It kind of like links into these other evidence-based guidance and examples. It's kind of like that list of case studies we've heard a lot of people keen to see.
If I can find it again, I will share it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks. Right, so I think we've got lots and lots of ideas there. What I want to do now is just move you down to this sort of dark turquoise part, which is trying to think very specifically then about Sport England. What do you think their role is in all of this? Because obviously in this huge ecosystem of sports and physical activity, and then all of the local authorities, there are a tremendous amount of organisations who could have a role in this, and of course active partnerships are one of those. But what is the specific role of Sport England in in this, as I said, this physical activity ecosystem when it comes to environmental sustainability and driving action, supporting action, guiding action for those kind of grassroots clubs and groups. So if you could focus your mind specifically on what you think the role of Sport England is.
Again, you might think what I said above, I think is Sport England. So please feel free to copy or move any of those notes down to this section as well.
And while you're there, we have also just popped in a space specifically related to that code of sports governance as well. If you feel like you need help on that, that there's a requirement for Sport England's and UK Sport have put on you as a funded organisation, what would be helpful for you to be able to complete that and to be able to not just do the annual report, but to actually embed it into your governance and into your decision making? View on sort of funding and investment decisions, and one of the things we've been exploring with them is how they can first of all have specific funds that have more of an environmental sustainability focus, but second of all ensuring that any kind of funding and investment has a caveat that the recipient has to have a sustainability plan and to be able to report on their progress. So I'd love any thoughts on that and how they can leverage their funding for good in this area. If anyone would like to come off mute or put your hand up, please do. Or would that be terribly burdensome for you? Got lots around leadership. And just that vision, providing the direction and the roadmap. And providing guidance and free resources, action plans to get you all started. That would be very helpful, I'm sure. One of the roles that Sport England plays is as a statutory consultee for any, new buildings and new outdoor facilities and spaces where sports and physical activity would take place. And I'd love to hear anyone's views if you've been involved in perhaps going through that process. What role could Sport England play in that when it comes to environmental sustainability? Because that's something we haven't really unearthed in any of the other focus groups yet. I don't know whether anyone here could talk to that. Do they have a role to help drive up standards for climate resilience and less flooding, or better maintenance regimes, or maybe low carbon design? Is anyone here who could talk to that?
I think it's a really difficult position, actually, because most of the measures that we might automatically jump to that we would want clubs or organizations in the sector to put in place probably have some kind of cost. Most of them do. Most of the big difference, things that make the big difference, probably have a bit of a cost. And so if you put those requirements in, you may end up then inhibiting the amount of physical activity that can be delivered. So you might restrict the provision as an unintended consequence of doing something good for the environment. And if your overall priority is about increasing physical activity, regardless of kind of other outcomes, then those two things may not always be very comfortable together. So I don't take a strong view either way, but I think we have to do something around sustainability, but there is a risk there that we could end up with a different outcome.
That's it. Those sort of perverse outcomes or unintended consequences are going to be so important to consider in this. Thanks, Nick.
One thing. Oh, sorry, you go.
Sorry, on statutory consultation on playing pitches and the like, I think we've seen that they are trying to influence this agenda more. So as business plans come forward, they're looking at more commentary around sustainability, but they're not a statutory consultee on things like active travel, and often it's the travel to and from the sites and some of those other issues that they're only able to try and advocate for rather than actually object to plans that are in place. So their ability to influence is somewhat limited.
That's a really good nuance. Thanks, Martin. Kate, if you can just make sure that all of these, I know she's such a fast typer, she'll be capturing all of this, but that is just brilliant. Thank you. Right, we've got lots there. And I can also see a few of you popping things in that bottom bit around the Copa Sports governance as well. Okay. The final section that we've got on the right, and we're all set for an early finish, so you'll all be pleased you can probably get 20 minutes back in your day at least. Is this anything else? We've got coaches debrief over on the right, which is, Kate, if you could send everyone over to that. It's just anything else that we haven't covered today in the kind of specific sections of this focus group that we've had that you think are just worth getting off your chest and getting it done. It may be something for the active partnerships to consider moving forwards. It may be something we just completely missed and haven't brought up. What else? Anything else?
Any final thoughts or support from Sport England that you think is just so important it needs to be said twice?
Role of the media, that's an interesting one. That would be good to ponder. And I love that whoever's put that in there is also pondering it. Is question mark, is there a role for the media in this? I'm sure there is. So we are going to be drawing the session to a close in a couple of minutes. So at this point, David, I might just bring you in to see if there's anything else you think you'd like to sort of bring up or reflect on or say as the kind of orchestrator of this group.
Well, thank you, Joe. I think two things. One of the things which the climate crew is trying to do, and it's about 8 or 9 individuals from across the active partnerships, we're desperately not trying to write a national strategy or a national policy. It's all about what we do at a local level. So I think that's the first key thing, that we're trying not to set that national strategy, but it to be something that is embedded locally into what people's situation is. I think the second thing is, and I can see Aaron and others from the group on the and Charlotte, few of us do happen to have an environmental degree or something like that. I'm not one of them, but I think there's a real passion and enthusiasm, and that's what's driven us so far. So I think it's like keeping that passion and enthusiasm forward. And please do chip in. You know, it's not a secret squirrel group or something like that. We can make the group as big, as small as we want to. But I think it's just that how we keep this conversation on a personal level. I personally believe that environmental sustainability and the equality, diversity, inclusion agenda are just two sides of the same coin. And we won't solve EDI without solving environmental sustainability and vice versa. So we are hoping to run another event on the 7th of June, a date for your diaries, and that will be where Sport England will be reporting back on everything that we all wrote in all of our 6-month reports around environmental sustainability, and what sort of come through there as collective themes. As sort of like this other bit of like, okay, we've given our ideas today, but what did come through that, so that Sport England will be not responding back to us, but giving us that, this is what you told us, this is what we're reflecting on it. Is that truthful? What should we be doing to help inform, as some of you heard this morning, what the next stage of Sport England reporting is going to be? So it's things like, as well, things like the environmental social governance stuff. Okay, what do we need to do that, or whatever? So that hopefully that invite will go out in the next couple of the next few days, really. So that's me, Joe.
And Jade has asked, would that session be able to be recorded and shared? Do you know if there's a response?
Well, absolutely. Everything, today's thing, Simon Hamilton from Active Norfolk's going to edit it and make it shared out. And that's the intention all the time. And I know Nikki's on the call somewhere here, and Nikki and Laura are working on how we do the hub nationally to make that much more that people can go in and look at stuff and re-look at stuff and come back and check on that side. But so I know they're doing some great work on that, and we'll just need to stick with them, because it's not as simple as we'd all want it to be. But yeah, it'll all be recorded and shared.
Brilliant. Thanks, David. Aaron, I can see you've got your hand up. I'll invite you in at this point.
Thanks, Jay. Just curious to kind of know whether it's just from this group or more broadly around how important people think climate change is. Because I think, you know, some climate experts describe it as the biggest challenge facing our time, what we've ever experienced. And it's that inconsistency of sort of gravitas is causing a bit of paralysis. So, you know, one of the guys mentioned a sort of two-tiered system, and we've got similar sort of setup here in Devon. You know, one has declared a climate emergency, sort of one hasn't. And then where do you take the strength of the problem if there's inconsistency in approach? And I just think, and that's kind of one of the comments I put for Sport England around, if this is a global challenge, then surely we need to be pushing influence upwards as well as enabling downwards. And I think it's super important that if we have channels into central government, which can affect stronger and wider change, then we need to be putting pressure there and pushing up as much as we are enabling downwards. And I think it would also be good to kind of measure case studies on what's come from pushing upwards as well as enabling downwards. So it's great that we've enabled certain groups or clubs to continue via X, but what have we done kind of larger and that can provide a bit more impact, and be good to kind of capture those case studies as well.
Fantastic. What a brilliant final comment. And I love that, about how they can leverage their position to drive action and coordinated action on that higher level as well as through the sector. So we'll definitely take that away. Thanks, Aaron. You fancy becoming a sustainability consultant? Right, I think at that point we'll draw it to a close. So thank you so much for your time and for getting so involved. We have got hundreds of suggestions on the Miro board. We've also heard some really interesting insights verbally, which is always good for us to be able to just unpick that and understand things a little bit more depth. So thank you so much for participating. In terms of next steps, what we'll do is keep this board open until maybe the end of the week, and then we'll PDF it and we'll send it to you so you'll have it. We're continuing with our other focus groups, and you are very welcome to come and attend those as well. If you would like to be part of that wider conversation with other stakeholders, please do feel free to come along. It is the same format, so there is a caveat that you will be talking about the same things, but it's just if you want to hear what others are saying and be part of that conversation, you are very welcome. And what we're going to be doing then in June is taking all of the findings from the interviews, from our survey and all the other surveys that have been happening, and all of these focus groups, and doing our analysis and then trying to help Sport England and develop their strategy. Anything I've missed, Kate, in terms of next steps?
Sorry, I don't think so. No. Sounds great.
And from you, David, anything else, or shall we draw it to a close there?
I think a big virtual applause to everybody today, but particularly yourselves, Joe and Kate. That was really well. I personally found it really inclusive. I was engaged. I couldn't keep up putting the post-its on. It was really good, and I can't believe how quickly it's gone. So, Joe and Kate, thank you so much for all your time, and all my active partnership colleagues. Honestly, so appreciate giving the time today. Absolutely brilliant, and it's stunning what's on the Miro board. It's just fantastic. Talk about we've got a way forward. Brilliant, brilliant.
Agreed. Thank you, David. And just quickly, one thing, Joe. Somebody asked in the comments if I could send through kind of a bit of a write-up about the survey and the survey link that you can then forward on to all of your partners. Yes, I can definitely do that. I just need to make sure I have everyone's emails from this event, but I'm sure I can figure that out with the help of yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Yes, please do help us spread the word. If you could do a social media post about the survey, that would be brilliant. Help us get a really large number of responses from those kind of the grassroots clubs and organisations. That would be brilliant. Thank you very much. We'll let you get on with your day now. As I said,
thanks everyone.
Board will be open until Friday if you have any further thoughts. Thank you very much.